Now on News 9 this morning, Lee bringing rough seas and gusty winds. What to expect with Futurecast.
All right, the name has changed, but it is still producing hurricane-force winds. The impact that post-tropical cyclone Lee is having on New England right now.
Lee may no longer be a hurricane, but is still expected to have an impact on the seacoast. We'll show you the current conditions and tell you about some of the concerns.
And 2 people are injured after a driver crashed into Hart's restaurant in Meredith.
It's like a bomb went off, or a gun, a few guns went off.
The charges that driver is now facing.
No one covers New Hampshire like we do. WMUR News 9 this morning starts right now.
After days of preparation, Lee is making its way through the Gulf of Maine as we speak. A couple of hours ago, Lee was downgraded from a hurricane to a post-tropical cyclone.
But regardless of that, it is churning up high surf and rip currents and gusty winds that could lead to some power outages later on today. Good morning, New Hampshire. It's 8 o'clock on this Saturday, September 16th. I'm Erin Falo.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Sean McDonald. Yeah, we're watching that high tide coming in this afternoon. Right now, we have Ray Brewer along the seacoast keeping an eye on potential issues caused by Lee.
And we're going to check in with Ray in just a moment, but we do want to get you started with our team of weather forecasters today. We want to send things over to Kevin Scrupa and Matt Honig. So the biggest concern maybe for high tide and later on this afternoon when those winds are really going to kick up.
Yeah, that is the concern for the coastline. Certainly will be the rough surf as well as the possible beach erosion just due to the closest pass and the high tide coming up just after 1 o'clock this afternoon. Also, we are expecting the winds to continue to increase. They've been kind of slowly doing so this morning and through the overnight hours. Wind advisory for the North Country, especially up in elevation, as the storm continues to lift northward, and maybe even after it makes landfall later on today, we will see the wraparound winds up through the North Country, and there could be some gusts over 35 to 40 miles an hour. So because of that, the wind advisory remains intact. Still Lee lifting northward. Here is the latest advisory as of 8 o'clock this morning. Forward speed of 25 miles an hour. Top wind still 80 miles an hour. So again, while the title has changed, the effects for us around here really no different as far as the expectations are concerned. We have been seeing a little bit of a back edge on the far western edge of the precipitation shield move across some central and eastern areas of New Hampshire. This is not incredibly heavy rainfall associated with the tropical system, but mainly a steady lighter rain that is going to be coming down. 1/4 to a half inch is a possibility through the morning, should be withering away through the afternoon. For more on some of the other concerns with this today, let's head over to meteorologist Matt Honig.
Yeah, Kevin, we're really escaping the worst of the rain and the wind from this storm system, but it's a completely different story out on the open waters of the Gulf of Maine just to our east. This is a look at some of the live buoy data we have coming into our weather center. Along the coastline, waves already kicking up between 3 and 6 feet, double-digit wave heights, even just about 20 or 30 miles offshore right now, and winds there gusting over 50 miles per hour on some of those buoys. Thankfully, it seems like we're going to be missing the worst of those winds, but still, the coastline could see some gusts up around 40 miles per hour this morning, and those winds also start to crank up across the higher terrain of northern New Hampshire later on today. Right now, we are just exiting low tide, high tide coming in right around 1 o'clock today, but thankfully the component of the wind is offshore, and that is going to keep the worst of the impacts away from the seacoast. Just minor impacts for places like Portsmouth and Hampton Harbors, where there could be some areas of splashover and very minor beach erosion. Certainly the coastal impacts are going to be the greatest here in New Hampshire, really minimal impacts when you get away from the coastline, but still those gusty winds continue today, even some pockets of showers continuing through this morning. Kevin and I will be tracking the latest on where the storm stands now and where we go forward through the rest of the weekend in just a few minutes.
All of us will feel that wind today. The biggest concerns from Lee are along the coastline. Here's a side-by-side look at Hampton Beach.
Yeah, what you're seeing on the left is video from this morning's high tide. That was about 1 a.m. On the right, the current conditions. It's about low tide right now. The next high tide is this afternoon, and we're expected to see some rough surf.
WMUR's Ray Brewer is in Hampton tracking the conditions for us this morning. I know the winds are starting to kick up, right, Ray?
Yeah, that's correct, Sean. We still have a little light rain falling, but it really hasn't been bad throughout this morning. Now, take a look at the current conditions. You can see that the New Hampshire State lifeguards are getting set. They will be out today, but that being said, they are still urging people to stay out of the water, or if you do go in, only go into your knees. The concern is that strong rip currents associated with this storm. Now, a storm like this also will kick up the waves, and that will attract surfers, but again, they're saying rain. Only experienced surfers should be out there. There is one lone surfer out there right now. I don't know if you'll be able to see him or not, but he is also a lifeguard, so he's also very experienced in dealing with conditions like this. Now, so far, so good. We're not getting any reports of flooded roads or damage caused by this storm, but of course, the tide has literally just turned, is on its way back in, so that could change throughout the morning. Reporting live at Hampton Beach, Ray Brewer, WMUR News 9.
All right, Ray, thank you very much. The wind's starting to kick up there, but it's still a little bit of rainfall coming down.
And the New Hampshire Highland Games, by the way, and festival events at Loon Mountain are going to be canceled today. Officials say the decision was made after consulting with local and state safety officials. Off-property indoor events will continue. A decision regarding tonight's concert is going to be made before noon today. Also, the Reach the Beach finish line has been moved due to Lee. It is now going to be inside Winnicott High School. So definitely this storm is having an impact on weekend plans. But when we talk about the Highland Games, they set up these big tents.
Yeah.
You don't want to have big high winds when you're dealing with big tents out there.
And a lot of events have been moved from Saturday to Sunday. It's going to be much more calm tomorrow. Lee will complete its pass by New Hampshire today, but the Appalachian Trail Conservancy warns hikers will not be in the clear.
River and stream crossings in places like Maine have already risen to potentially dangerous levels, and the rain from Lee is just going to add to that. Officials say that hikers should use extreme caution at crossings and plan for alternative routes.
Got to be careful. Meanwhile, the U.S. Forest Service is encouraging visitors to avoid the White Mountains this weekend. They warn winds at higher elevations up in the White Mountains could bring gusts up to 50 miles per hour. That, combined with temperatures in the 50s, could increase the risk of hypothermia. So think about that as you head out the door. Lee is kicking up strong gusty winds to our north in Maine.
Reporter Miles Hood is in Rockland now with a look at the conditions there.
I'm out here in Rockland, Maine, where the post-tropical storm Lee is taking its effects here on the coast, in the mid-coast of Maine. I'm just going to step out a shot so you can see this right now. The wind is blowing the rain absolutely sideways. The gusts are picking up. It is absolutely a no-go weather. We have some cars here in the parking lot really just taking a hold of the conditions. But right now, look at that current on the wind. You see the winds are blowing, rocking some of the boats that are still here. And even the birds are dealing with the wind and rain conditions here, getting blown sideways left and right in their path. We're going to continue to cover this as we can and give you updates. Reporting in Rockland, I'm Miles Hood.
All right, there, a look in Maine. Stay with WMUR and WMUR.com throughout the day today for the very latest on Lee. We'll be updating information around the clock as Lee passes by, and you can monitor its path with an interactive radar.
Well, this morning we are working to learn more about this crash that closed a section of Route 101 in Hampton. Hampton Fire posted about this closure around 10 o'clock last night. At this point, police are not releasing any other details, but they do say that the road has reopened.
Time is 8:08 on this Saturday. A 51-year-old is facing DUI charges after crashing into Hart's Turkey Farm in Meredith. It happened shortly before 8:30 last night. Police say 2 people inside the restaurant were injured, including one who needed to be brought to the hospital for non-life-threatening injuries. There is extensive damage to the building, as you can see in the video. News 9 spoke to a man who was visiting from Texas for his niece's wedding. He said they had just finished dinner when it happened.
Got up, and then we could all see the car came through the wall of the window. Part of the car was inside the restaurant. It's like a bomb went off, or a gun, a few guns went off. It's just a loud sound. It scared everybody.
Very scary moments. The restaurant wrote in a statement on Facebook that they're very grateful for the quick response of first responders and their customers who talked about this. Everybody knows Hart's up there in Meredith. It is an institution in the Lakes region, but glad everyone will be okay.
But it's interesting. You see, like the gift shop and the dining room were damaged in that.
There,
wow. Coming up on News 9 this morning, how some New England researchers are using ocean robots to track the storm.
Post-tropical cyclone Lee making its closest pass this afternoon. The next high tide just after 1 o'clock today. We will keep tabs on that. And a little bit of rain that is making its way through. Winds picking up. That will be the main feature for this afternoon. We'll have all the latest with Futurecast and team coverage in just a few minutes.
Weather Center is keeping a close eye on Lee. Also, state officials watching its path. And last night, the State Emergency Operations Center elevated to partial activation in anticipation of this storm.
We are joined live by Vanessa Palangi, the Community Outreach Coordinator for New Hampshire Homeland Security and Emergency Management. Good morning, Vanessa.
Good morning.
And a morning like this, we have Lee passing by New Hampshire. What are your big concerns?
We are still monitoring any changing conditions that could happen with this storm. The winds could still be a factor, especially along the seacoast. So we're asking people to still remain prepared, especially as those winds start to ramp up later on today.
We've seen the Highland Games canceled for today because of the high winds that are expected. Are you hearing from other groups that are planning events today and wanting to know what they should do? Should they move forward?
We do have a race that's going on where they were supposed to end at Hampton Beach today, and they moved that ending location to the high school. There is also a race tomorrow that is going on that was a triathlon, and they are no longer doing the swimming portion of that race in Rye.
Give us some idea when you prepare for something like this. Do you have equipment on standby? Do you move it to certain places just in case things go wrong?
There is some equipment staged throughout the state. The utilities also do the same thing, as well as FEMA. So there are crews as well as some resources throughout the state. The American Red Cross has also done the same.
And what kind of warnings would you give to people who may be dealing with power outages later on today?
Power outages, just be prepared for them. Make sure that all your items are charged. That if you do come across any down wires, if you're out and about, that you stay away from them and call 911. And if you do lose power, you should call your utility provider once every 24 hours just to let them know that the power is still not on in your home.
All right, Vanessa Palangi from Homeland Security and Emergency Management, thank you very much for giving those very good tips.
Thank you.
Well, in order to track hurricanes, there are a number of scientific tools that meteorologists use to determine the storm's intensity, and that includes a network of ocean robots.
Yeah, researchers use 6-foot-tall metal cylinder robots to get below the surface and understand how much the ocean is actually fueling the intensity of storms like Lee. Susan Wafels, a senior scientist at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute in Massachusetts, says the robots help to understand the warm ocean layers which fuel storms.
And the Argo array has thousands of these profilers all through the global ocean, and they allow us to take the satellite picture and map it down into the ocean so that we know how deep the warm layers are.
It takes a team effort to do this. Wafels says there are almost 4,000 robots in the oceans around the world to help gather this data. I didn't know this.
Really important, though, because that warm water will actually fuel these hurricanes. It is now 8:15. Kevin and Matt will be back in with your full forecast for the weekend and also the latest on Lee.
Garupa with your Stormwatch 9 forecast.
Out of the state of our science today, we've been watching Lee and tracking it pretty much every advisory for the better part of a week. It's just a matter of when it does eventually get here, a week, 10 days later, as to within 50 to 100 miles of how close it is going to be to us. So there's going to be plenty of lead time and a lot of run up to a lot of these tropical systems. It's just a matter of how close they're going to be to us. This one, we are on the western fringes of it, and it is providing at least some shower activity this morning. We'll see the rough surf, especially as we get up to about high tide here in about 5 hours from now, and we will continue to see the winds ramping up even as this thing continues to lift northward through the daylight hours today. Top winds at 80 miles an hour. It is no longer officially, quote-unquote, a hurricane. It is a post tropical cyclone, meaning it is losing some of its hurricane characteristics. As opposed to a warm core system going into the cooler water, it's starting to kind of gradually transition to a normal area of low pressure. But the impacts for us are the same. Winds possibly gusting over 40, especially near the coast and up north where we have a wind advisory posted. The rough surf at the coastline, the beach erosion possibilities, and the rough seas going all the way through the afternoon and into tonight. You can see on Storm Tracker that we continue to see some areas of rain. Now, this isn't tropical type rain, although it is coming from a post-tropical system. This is a general, steady, light to at times moderate rain. A quarter to a half inch is a possibility with this, kind of wrapping around that. We do expect a lot of that coverage of that rain to start to wind down here by around noontime or 1 o'clock. Biggest gusts at the moment are closer to the coastline, but again, we will continue to see these numbers escalate as the day wears on. For more on the effects and how today plays out, meteorologist Matt Honig has more on that.
And Kevin, we really came within a very close margin of this being a major storm for us here in New England. Thankfully, with the storm about 150 miles off of the coastline this morning, we really are just getting brushed by this on the extreme western edge. Now, this is technically no longer a hurricane. Again, the official term now from the National Hurricane Center is a post-tropical cyclone. Basically, while it's still packing the same punch, it's lost a lot of its tropical characteristics. And as this process happens, we often see the wind field of these storms really start to expand. This is a map showing where we're having forecasted tropical storm force winds here in yellow, and these are actually hurricane force winds here in red. And look how expansive this is, over a 600-mile diameter across this entire storm. Again, we really are just on the western fringes of this, with the strongest winds largely staying offshore this morning. This yellow shaded area generally showing where wind gusts could top 40 miles per hour. Now, as the storm pulls away, the winds will actually kick up for a lot of us across New Hampshire today, especially in the higher terrain through northern and western parts of the state, where we could get some gusts over 40 miles per hour. For that reason, a wind advisory continues for all of Coos, all of Carroll counties, and northern parts of Grafton County. This goes into effect the next couple of hours, all the way through midnight tonight. But you don't have to be at the coastline or on mountaintops to see strong winds today, with some gusts even as high as 25 to 35 miles per hour over the interior before things really do start to wind down this evening. So while this is not going to be a major impact for most of us, coastal and northern parts of the state should gear up for those gusty winds in the coming hours. Maybe if you have any loose outdoor furniture and belongings, maybe like umbrellas or loose chairs, just a good idea to secure those through this evening. And while power outages are really going to be limited, probably a good idea just to have the generator ready to go, though most of us are probably not going to need it. Once Lee passes by us tonight, big improvements in store for the rest of the weekend. For more on the extended forecast, we'll bring back Kevin.
Totally different day, a little bit of a lingering breeze, but 70s and sunshine for the day tomorrow. We'll have one other period of rain in the 7-day forecast that is slated and centered around Monday. Otherwise, it is lower 70s for highs and a lot of sunshine for the remainder of the next work week. Grow It Green is coming up next, and we'll be right back.
Welcome to today's Grow It Green. We're at the Laura Lee Vigie Botanical Gardens in Berlin, New Hampshire, and I'm joined by Sean O'Brien from UNH Cooperative Extension. Sean, the other day I'm out mowing my lawn and I noticed that there's some wasps hovering around the ground there.
Yeah.
And then it looks like they're going into a nest. Is that common this time of year?
It definitely is. And there's a number of different wasps that we have native to New Hampshire, and especially the ground-dwelling wasps that can be kind of problematic if they're in a high-traffic area. So you want to watch out for those. But I will say that these wasps can be very beneficial to us, though. There's a few different really beneficial aspects to them, including controlling other insects that we may not be a big fan of, like the tomato hornworm. That's a big one that a lot of gardeners have a big problem with. And these wasps will actually lay their eggs on the back of the hornworm, and then the eggs will hatch, and then it will kill the hornworm. And furthermore, these wasps, a lot of them are actual pollinators for flowers and vegetables and things like that.
Now, we should differentiate these wasps from, like, say, the yellow jackets, right? That tend to swarm and, you know, if you're mowing the lawn, can really come after you as well.
Absolutely. And yellow jackets, especially this time of year, they build up their numbers throughout the whole summer. And so around September, they get their wasp nests are big in number, and they can actually be pretty aggressive because they will defend themselves. So you have to be careful about those, especially when they're in places like walkways or around places where you do a lot of traffic.
Yeah. What about, for instance, there is a wasp nest maybe where my children play or something like that. I want to get rid of it.
You want to control that, yeah. So we would recommend using a chemical insecticide for that, and you want to be very careful, and you probably want to take care of that at night when the wasps are both in the nest and less active. They're more active during the day. So you want to make sure you spray it. Get one of those ones that spray 10 feet or more. Spray it, and then have a nice shovel full of dirt that you can put right over that to cover them up and keep them inside.
And then how long do I let that sit for and before, trying to see if they're all gone?
Yeah, I would give it a couple of days. Once you put the dirt on after you've sprayed it, you want to walk away, and it's very slowly because you don't want to, they actually are attracted to fast movement. So you want to cover it up, spray it, cover it up, walk away, and then leave it for a few days, and then maybe check on it to see if you see any activity after that.
Okay, and then hopefully then you won't be bothered by them. But remember, if they're out of the way, they do help. They are pollinators. And that's it for today's Grow It Green.